Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll get started here in just a moment. Hi, everyone. For those of you who have already joined, it's straight up 1:45 on the East Coast time, and I'll give this roughly about a minute, and we'll get underway. All right, we still have a few folks trickling in, so maybe another 30 seconds, and then we'll get going. And there we go. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're located. This session is the 1:45 session entitled Understanding the FHWA's Advancing BIM for Infrastructure National Strategic Roadmap and How It Impacts Local Public Agencies. Not just LPAs, but also CEI service firms who do work for both the LPAs and the DOTs as well. Some real quick housekeeping reminders. Everyone entered this event muted. And there are two communication tools available to you. One is a chat feature. Feel free to use that for general comments and communicating with each other. And there is a separate Q&A feature in the menu of the interface. And if you want your question to get our attention and get a possible response, be sure to use the Q&A feature for any actual questions to the content. A reminder that this and all the other sessions from the eMerge event are being recorded, and that those recordings will be available after eMerge for a period of time for you to access. My name is Terry Klein. I have been with Infotech for a little over 6 years. I am the Senior BIM and Digital Delivery Manager. I've been in the industry for about 45 years, 15 as an actual end user, CAD manager, so on. And the last 30, I've worked for one technology provider company or another over the last 30 years. I'm a member of lots of different subcommittees and committees on digital project delivery. I interact with a lot of our technology partners as well as our actual end users on a regular basis. I've got 10 topics that I plan to cover in the next 40 minutes. I won't bother going through each and every one of those. You'll see them as I go through. So let's get started. What is BIM for infrastructure or digital project delivery? For the purposes of this presentation, they mean exactly the same thing. BIM for infrastructure or digital project delivery, in essence, is the evolutionary next step in the way that work gets done in the infrastructure industry, the whole AECO industry. It's more than the application of technology. This graphic on the left-hand side came directly from the National Strategic Roadmap, and it identifies 4 key things that must evolve in order for this vision to work. And those are just not only tools and technologies, but we must have an emphasis on data, and we must establish and follow data standards. We need to increase our people's knowledge and skill set when it comes to handling of data and working with each other as the data of a project transitions from one department to another. And then to establish policies and processes that support those skilled people in getting those things done. It is a mindset change. There's no doubt about that. It's a transition from focusing only on your job to how your job fits in with the bigger picture with your other teammates. In essence, it's all about the data. To be involved in a digital project delivery world in the future, you need to not only be good at your job, but to be a good data steward while you're doing your job, to have a great emphasis on the data you create, the data you receive, and the data that you pass along to someone else. Ultimately, the goal is to deliver an accurate, geospatially aware, as-built representation of an asset to be maintained throughout that asset's lifetime. So what is the NSR? Well, technically, it's a 60-page PDF that was published back in June of 2021. It was a collaborative effort of a committee of people who put together this vision for the FHWA. But what it really is a scope of work, a specification that can be understood and followed. To put that into movie perspectives, I doubt there's anyone in the audience who never saw the Overboard movie, back in the 80s and 90s with Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn. And in the opening of that movie, she asks him to build something in her closet, and he builds it out of oak instead of building it out of cedar. And her response was, "Well, I'm not paying for that because any idiot should have known I wanted it out of cedar." Everybody remember that scene? Well, that is a tiny, tiny example of how much easier it is to work for someone who knows what they want instead of sort of has a general idea of what they want. Well, this is the FHWA telling you what they want. So that you don't have to wonder and you don't have to build your BIM efforts out of oak when they wanted it out of cedar the whole time. It is a uniform template that the FHWA would like all DOTs to use as they approach their solution for digital project delivery, and not just the DOTs. They want the CEI service firms to work in a way that is consistent. They want the locals to work in a way eventually that is consistent as well. It is a 10-year documented plan with defined milestones, procedures, recommendations, and expectations. It's a cookbook, and it's got clear definitions of the FHWA's definition of industry terms that are ubiquitous. You start talking to anybody about BIM, and you'll hear terms like level of development, level of detail, BIM maturity level. And there's always a debate. There's always an argument. There's always oh, well, that's not what I think it is. Well, the FHWA has thrown the gauntlet down. They said, I don't care what you think it is. I don't care what the AIA thinks it is. To the FHWA, this is what it is. And this is what we hope everybody will work towards. So it is a fantastic document that everybody should have access to. At the end of this presentation, I will have a series of 5 or 6 slides, and each of the documents I'm showing you, like this document here, will have a QR code associated with it so that you can just click and download that document. I'll leave each of those slides on the screen for 5 to 10 seconds to give you a chance to do that. So how did the NSR get created? Well, the FHWA has a program called the Global Benchmarking Program, and it is their focus to look at technologies, best practices, and what's going on in the world of transportation evolution outside of the United States. And they look at lots of different things, drone technologies and various things. But the GPB studied the use of BIM for infrastructure on a global basis. And the committee reviewed BIM-fee-based project results that were documented from the United Kingdom, France, Germany, South Korea, and Singapore. Then a group of them got on a plane and traveled over to Europe, and they met with the transportation agencies in the UK, Netherlands, and Norway. And while they were in the Scandinavian country, it was a gathering of all of those transportation agencies. So they not only met with Norway and Netherlands, but they also met with Denmark, Finland, and Sweden during that same event. What they learned in a nutshell is that European projects were seeing a documented 5 to 20% reduction in construction costs on their BIM for infrastructure projects. And the average savings was 8.2%. When you read the National Strategic Roadmap, they break it down into two different sections. One is called Little BIM, which is the evolution of data as it moves from design through letting to construction. And then they have what they define as Big BIM, which is the continuation of that from construction into operations and maintenance and asset management. This result of an average of 8.2% savings and up to 20% project cost savings was purely based on Little BIM, just the improvement of the handling of information as it goes between design and construction. But it is not a simple task to solve. It is an exercise in change management. So what challenges does the NSR address? Well, it costs more to produce a mile of roadway in the United States than anywhere else in the world. That's a documented problem. And the FHWA hopes that the implementation of BIM fee practices will address lowering of that cost. Most importantly, in my mind, it provides a clear definition of what the FHWA believes BIM fee is from their lens, their perspective, not anybody else's. It provides a 10-year strategic plan to get all US DOTs and the partners that they work with up to their definition of BIM maturity level 2 by 2031. It provides a uniform nationwide template for all US DOTs to use as they're embarking on their BIM fee programs. It promotes the use of internationally accepted open BIM standards like industry foundation classes, IFC 4.3, as opposed to dealing with vendor specific file formats and provided technologies. It promotes the use of intelligent models, not just models, but intelligent models, and model as a legal deliverable, which is by very definition, is the eventual elimination of stripping out 2D plan sets from an already existing model. Very brief mention of model as a legal deliverable. In order for that to work, we have to transition to a way in which instead of me creating a model like this and then creating 300 PDFs of various cross sections and plans and cross sections and details that go along with the model itself, the model needs to have enough information associated with every single object in the model so that it can be used by itself without the need for creating those 2D plan sets. There are multiple transportation pooled funds underway currently, and this is the most recent data of the various states that are actively conducting model as a legal deliverable pilots. They are in the process of planning active pilots, or they are in discussions to put a plan together to address model as a legal deliverable. A more important map from our perspective, my perspective, is this map here. These are all of the state agencies that use bidx.com. That is the online bidding system created by and made available through Infotech. And it is very tightly integrated with FHWA project pre-construction and some various other modules. And in a nutshell, 90% of all US construction projects that are related to highways are let through this system. This system is the key to model as a legal deliverable being successful or not, in my opinion, going forward. And what you need to know about bidx.com is that it has been enhanced in the last 60 days to be able to support IFC files. Prior to January of this year, if you wanted to include documents in your bid letting, you were limited to 2D, PDF, or TIFF files. As of January, any of these states using bidx.com who choose to take advantage of the plan room will be allowed to upload multiple IFC files, models, smart models, in addition to any 2D plan sets that they'd like to include in their letting. I did a session on this earlier, so I won't spend a lot of time on it here today, but if you weren't able to attend that session, and who could blame you? There's so many great sessions happening simultaneously. It's going to happen. I would encourage you to come back and access the recording from 11:45 this morning on this viewer. So what benefits does the NSR anticipate? Well, increased communication of design intent and requirements. As we've already stated, they expect to see a construction cost savings on these projects of up to 20%. And that is according to the European and Asian data that they collected. The result of that cost savings is predominantly from having fewer change orders, fewer claims, less rework, and projects being able to be finished faster. And with all of the workforce shortage issues everyone is dealing with around the world, nothing could be better than finishing projects faster so that your team can move on to something else more efficiently. They expect to benefit by having reduced risk to project partners by promoting a uniform national methodology. What do we mean? That means that a company like AECOM, HDR, WSP, whoever it is, doesn't have to be afraid that when they walk into Nebraska, this is going to be the BIM for infrastructure approach. And when they walk into New York, it's going to be the exact opposite. That is what the National Strategic Roadmap is hoping to avoid by creating a national uniform approach that any DOT could implement. They want to help US DOTs eliminate the existing departmental silos that exist today. Sorry, I've got a clock timer over here. I want to keep an eye on that. And they want to help people stay in compliance with the Title 23 federal code, the Code of Federal Regulations for highways. I've only listed 3 or 4 of the regulations here that are directly relatable to BIM for infrastructure, but these specifications are in the 23 CFR. And by following these guidelines documented in the NSR, it will keep an agency and their project partners in compliance with the federal code. Does the NSR have national support? It is absolutely supported by every major association and organization within the United States. AASHTO, ACEC, AGC, ARTBA, Building Smart, FHWA, all of them have published documents in support of a move to digital project delivery, model as a legal deliverable, for all of the reasons that I've stated so far. In the National Strategic Roadmap, the FHWA not only documented their vision and where they want to be and how they plan to get there, but they acknowledged that it's going to be an expensive, time-consuming process, and they need to put their money where their mouth is. This is one grant program that the FHWA has been supporting for the last 2 or 3 years. It's called the Advanced Digital Construction Management System grant program. It's part of IIJA. And what they did is they earmarked $100 million over a 4-year or 5-year period. And they started doling out this money to the agencies that have submitted grant requests. In 2023, they handed out roughly $26 million to 10 different agencies. And in 2024, they handed out an additional $14 to $15 million to 8 specific DOTs. And those are the ones that I chose to show on the map here. But that list shows the 18 US DOTs that have received ADCMS grants over the last 2-year period. But that's not where the FHWA is limiting their investment in BIM for infrastructure. There are multiple transportation pooled funds underway. There's one called 5372, which is the BIM for bridges and structures pooled fund that recently completed phase one. And two of the things that came out of that pooled fund is the document you see here, which will again have a QR code and be downloadable at the end of the presentation. This is their final report for the phase one bridges and structures. And in addition to that is this IDM document. And this is a data exchange standard for transitioning bridge design projects into bridge construction projects, and the absolute group collective vision of this is how it should be done. Not could be, but should be done. It's called the IDM. They have just now entered into bridges and structures phase two. There are 23 different US DOTs that are involved in that. There's also a BIM for infrastructure pooled fund, and it is doing what the bridges and structures pooled fund already did and is continuing to do on a roadway basis. They have not completed their work and they have not issued a final report or an IDM, but that is absolutely expected to be some of the deliverables that come out of the BIM for infrastructure pooled fund. Is in essence the exact same information. Here's our final report, and here is a defined specification for data exchange as a project moves between design and construction for roadways. Separate from that, there is a pooled fund for the application of enterprise GIS specifically to transportation projects. 18 different agencies are involved in that. There is a brand new TPF that is in development. It just started as a solicitation a few weeks ago, and it is for drone data standardization. Every DOT in the country has a drone program. And if you attend the peer exchanges, the number one problem you hear discussed is we're collecting so much data, but none of it is being done in a standardized, uniform way to where my data could be easily shared with a bordering state. That pooled fund is designed to address that situation. Completely separate from all of that, FHWA project has a pooled fund involving 7 states underway currently to enhance FHWA project to be able to handle asset data more efficiently to make the transition of design through letting, through construction, and into asset management more easily, especially when it's a state involving FHWA project, which is roughly 44 of the 50 US DOTs. So Asset Tracker is a pooled fund that is, I think, going to have great impact in the next 5 years. And in addition to that, you got AASHTO, JSTAN, and JTCES standing committees. The FHWA is still issuing stick and aid and raise and build grants that are available. And all you have to do is go after those. And again, in most of these, there's matching money requirements, but all of these activities are things that the FHWA is putting their available funds towards. One slide on Asset Tracker. It is under development now. It is anticipated to be released in July of this year. The goal was to develop an agnostic, uniform manner for connecting FHWA project data to other agency data via a identified, unique asset ID so that attributes can be tracked throughout the life cycle. It was started in July of last year, and it has been funded and driven by participation of these 7 states. My contact information will be available at the end of this presentation. And if you have any questions about Asset Tracker, I encourage you to reach out to us for more details. So how does this affect local agencies? Yeah, we talked about the NSR and how it affects LPAs. Well, the DOTs and the LPAs share industry resources. That has never been more true. The contractors and consultants who are doing work for the DOTs are the same ones doing work for the LPAs in a lot of cases. And workforce shortages have only increased that. Firms who begin to experience the benefits, the anticipated and documented benefits of BIM for infrastructure are going to be very reluctant to going back to doing things the old way for a local public agency who simply has not brought themselves up to speed. So you can anticipate as the DOTs move forward with this under pressure from the world as a whole to do so, so are their project partners. And if you want to keep up to speed, it's an issue you're going to need to take seriously and address. You'll need to decide for yourself what data is of value to your agency and how you plan to manage it. But I wouldn't just do that in a vacuum. I would do that and compare what I've decided to the NSR to see if what I've decided is in compliance. You'll need to establish and follow agency data management rules, in essence, have clear data governance specifications. And we'll acknowledge, easily acknowledge, not all projects will need to utilize 3D smart models, but every project will need to be conducted with a data-centric view, data first. You should expect to see BIMFI-related project deliverables, and in fact, we already have in federal and state contracts. It will not be surprising in the future, I believe, to see a federally funded state project that clearly says one of your deliverables is an intelligent IFC-based model or collection of models that all work together. You'll need to educate your workforce on these procedures and workflows and specifically their role within the workflow. What is their responsibility? And as you hire new resources, staff, consultants, contractors, you'll need to do so with an expectation of them being capable of working in a BIMFI-based project culture. You'll need to understand and implement open systems like IFC 4.3. So these next slides are purely my opinion. What are the NSR's most important features? Well, as I started out with that overboard example, I truly believe that it's easier to create something when you know what is being asked of you. And that's the greatest value of the NSR from my perspective is a clear definition of what BIMFI means to the FHWA, a clear definition of what they anticipate to be the benefits and challenges. It's a clear definition of, from their lens, what does BIM maturity level 0, 1, 2, and 3 mean to the FHWA? It is a clear stated expectation to have all US DOTs reach their definition of BIM maturity level 1 by 2026, which, okay, wake up alarm, that is next year, and a clear goal to have all US DOTs reach the FHWA's defined BIM maturity level 2 by 2031. So there in the document, there are pages of detailed descriptions of each of these. I've only captured a couple of the graphics for this presentation. But in summary, these are their definitions of BIM maturity levels 0 through 3. Level 0 is an agency who is doing all of their work based on documents, files, CAD files, and Excel spreadsheets, and those types of things. It's a document-based approach to project delivery. Level 1 is a data model approach. You're moving from files to intelligent models, but they're not well integrated. It's silos of technologies and procedures, but a step in the right direction. Level 2, which is where they want all US DOTs to be by 2031, is a further evolution of data-centric project delivery with intelligent models at the core of that. And that is what they're defining as an integrated data model approach to project delivery. And the holy grail, which they're not even asking for by 2031, is the enterprise data model, big BIM definition of taking data from planning and design through letting, through construction, into operations and maintenance and asset management, and collecting digital as-built along the way. The NSR, again, my definition of its most important features is it is a defined 10-year plan for US DOT's project partners to follow when they're implementing their BIM programs. The 10-year phased timeline, I've got 2 slides on this. This is the FHWA summarized timeline, is for the first 2 years, they're identifying that as the short-term period of this program, and those are for pilot projects. Years 2 through 5, which is what we would be in now, is the medium term or extended pilot project phase. And then the final 5 years, which would be 2026 to 2031, is moving into the mainstreaming phase, being fully productive with BIM maturity level 1. Two, maturity level 2. They in the document, all of these abbreviated values like D3 are clearly defined and explained, but it's hard to interpret it on a single slide like this. So I highly encourage you to download the document and read the details. But they also included a different graphic on the timeline that I think was more communicative, and that is this one here, showing on a quarter by quarter basis for a lot of it when they expected certain milestones to be reached. And if you're curious, that's where we are right now if you go back to the starting day of June 2021. And lastly, what I think are one of its most important features is a clear vision for the future of federally funded roadways and bridge projects and how they should be delivered. I am a product of the 80s. I was born in 1962 and I started my career in 1980. And one of the worldwide phenomenon books that came out in those times was a book by a gentleman named Stephen Covey, and it was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it had 7 different recommended ways of performing, life skills and professional activities. But the one that sunk into me as a 18-year-old kid at the time was begin with the end in mind. It couldn't be simpler. How do you know? How do you get to where you're going to go if you have no plan of where you want to be? And I think that's that's the bottom line summary approach to the whole NSR. Is that's what the FHWA has done. They have defined where they want to be in 2031 and how they think it's possible to get there, and then they put their money behind it. So to me, if I was working at a DOT or any company or LPA who's involved in federally funded projects, and I hadn't already begun a BIM approach for my agency or organization, it is absolutely the place I would start as my foundational approach to BIM for infrastructure or digital project delivery. Next steps for the National Strategic Roadmap. When you first open it up and you read the introductory chapters of the document, it states clearly this is a living document, and they expect it to evolve. Well, it's 5 years later, and they haven't made any changes to it. I did reach out to the FHWA and ask that specific question of them as well. If it's supposed to be a living document, when is it going to get changed? And what I was told from high-ranking people at the FHWA is they are in a data gathering cycle currently. They're watching the work that's being done through these ADCMS grants, through these model as a legal deliverable active pilots, and various other activities that are going on. And that most likely by 2026, we will see an update to the NSR from the FHWA, incorporating lessons learned and modifications that they think might be necessary from the document as it was written in 2021. They're also very closely involved in working with all of the uh, um, uh, people and organizations involved in all these various transportation pooled funds and activities on the Transportation Research Board, the National Institute of Building Sciences, AASHTO. All of that is being reviewed and will work its way into an updated version of the NSR. And the world has changed in the last 4 years. Artificial intelligence has been around for a long, long time, but the explosion into large language models and DeepSeek and all of the things that we're inundated with these days about AI. Even our keynote this year was on artificial intelligence. It is here. It's not going away, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And that's one of the things that the FHWA needs to do when they update the NSR, is to include some type of messaging and vision for the incorporation of AI into these practices and procedures. I've got a handful of recommendations as I come to the conclusion of the presentation, and then I'll have those slides that have the QR codes on them. I do have multiple colleagues helping me with this presentation. They're watching the Q&A session. So if you've been asking questions through the Q&A, you're probably seeing a direct response from them already, but I'll check that as soon as I wrap up the presentation here in just a moment. So recommendations. Don't bury your head in the sand. I loved that Shelley included that today in her keynote. Is that does nobody any good. You can't turn out the lights and hide under the covers and think that this isn't happening, except the fact that our industry is in the middle of an evolutionary cycle. Download, read, and follow the advice given in all these documents. They are well worth your time. If you haven't already, form a BIM fee or digital project delivery committee made up of BIM, letting, construction, drone, O&M, and your external industry partner representatives as well. They have a wealth of experience and information to share with you on this subject. Let them in. They're not just vendors trying to take your money. They are experienced, knowledgeable people trying to help you. Give them a chance to be able to do that. Use these documents as a guide for developing your own BIM for infrastructure plan. And if you already have one, check it against the National Strategic Roadmap to see if what you're planning to do is consistent with what they're asking to be done on a national level. Emphasize the importance of data over both 2D plans and pretty 3D models. A pretty 3D model is useless. A 3D model that clearly communicates the design intent in a better way than a 2D plan set and includes the necessary data required to build it, that is what needs to be the focus of a BIM for infrastructure effort. Emphasize data sharing and data governance over departmental silos. Identify the roles responsible within your organization in order to enforce and educate on the need for these data governance and compliance initiatives. And start with manageable tasks like doing digital as-builts during construction inspections. In the case of a local public agency using Appia, Appia is already integrated with Esri. It is already integrated with Trimble and Leica. There are utilities called Mobile Inspector Measure Service to where Mobile Inspector can work with this survey grade hardware to do accurate geospatially located data gathering during the construction inspection process. So you have not only your notes and comments and photos, but you have the exact geolocated information from the observations that were made during the construction inspection process. So I've got about 5 minutes for questions, and while I'm start looking at that, I'm going to run through these slides with these QR codes. This is the QR code for the actual National Strategic Roadmap. You should be able to click on that and access that on the internet. This is the document I mentioned that led to the creation of the NSR. It is the actual global benchmarking report of exactly the conversations they had with these other countries and the results, the very, very project specific results that were shared with the FHWA. It's all documented and transparently available through these documents. The transportation pooled fund for bridges and structures, the one that recently completed phase 1. This is a download link to their final report. And this next one is also from the transportation pooled fund for bridges and structures. And it's the only one that has a cost associated with it. All of the others are available for download for free, but this document here, the IDM, is an AASHTO document and therefore sold through the AASHTO library or bookstore. So if you are an AASHTO member, you can purchase the IDM for $80, and a non-member would be able to access it and download it for $108. And I believe this is the last one I chose to include, but there may be additional ones being sent to you from my colleagues. This is the digital twin for the built environment. This is from the National Institute of Building Sciences, and it is from the Digital Twin Council, and specifically the Digital Twin Integration Subcommittee. It is a 54-page free PDF, and it clearly, in very simple language, explains the difference between a BIM model and a digital twin, and the various phases of evolution of a digital twin. And if you haven't downloaded and read this document in the past, I highly, highly recommend a download and read of this. It is well worth your time. So with that, I am done with my presentation. I'm going to jump in here and see if there are any Q&As in here. Okay, so there's one question, previous question in here says, how will President Trump's federal worker reduction affect grants and FHWA partnerships? Impossible for me to know that. I think every person on this webinar has their own and separate and passionate opinion about that. All I can do is wait and see. I hope it doesn't have any disruption of the ADCMS grants. That program is working. It's working very well. I hope it continues. However, there has been a massive call from the community. Secretary Perdue from Florida has given several testimonials with congressional committees on the fact that the ADCMS grants, in their opinion, have been very unfair because they are discretionary grants. And he and many others in the DOT community would rather see that money go into a formula type of calculation as opposed to a discretionary grant. So yeah, there's a lot of change underway right now. I think in the end, if everybody puts the needs of the country as a whole before their own specific needs, then I think we'll be where we all want to be. But time will tell. I have no way of anticipating that. Let's see, were there any other open questions in the Q&A? No, doesn't look like. And I've only got about a minute left, so I don't want to keep you from the next sessions. So let me get on to that. After I wrap this up in the next 30 seconds, there will be a 15-minute break. And then the final session of 2025 eMerge will happen this afternoon. It'll be a fireside chat hosted by my mentor and great friend, Ron Gant. uh, with input from Autodesk, Esri, and Trimble. And I absolutely encourage everyone to attend that. And thank you so much for attending my session today.